Well, hello and welcome to your Newsmax Daily for Thursday, July the 31st, 2025. It's the 5th of 5 Thursdays this month, and we are now 5 months away from New Year's Eve. 2025 is just flying by. Today is National Avocado Day, one of the few things that is delicious and actually good for you. It's also National Mutt Day, as in mixed breed dogs, mutts, a day to celebrate your mutt if you have one, or a day to adopt a mutt from a local shelter. I noticed in the headlines this morning, today is the first day of school in several Georgia school districts, maybe some other parts of the country as well. July 31st, the first day of school. It's ridiculous. People in the Northeast are like, school just ended here. There is a White House press briefing happening today. I'm sure trade deals will be a big topic of discussion, with tomorrow being the August 1st deadline. There will be plenty of questions about Ghislaine Maxwell and Epstein, but with Congress out, not much going to happen in terms of releasing anything there. And there will be some questions about the new discovery of documents related to Russiagate or Obamagate from FBI Director Kash Patel. As much as Democrats and some in the media want to discredit Tulsi Gabbard's information or completely ignore it, it's just like the Epstein file. This is not going to go away unless Republicans and conservative media let it go away. This is from Greg Kelly Reports.
I see these phonies, these the do-nothing Democrats. They said today that Putin wants to be sure that Trump gets elected. Here we go again. They're trying to start a rumor. It's disinformation. That's the only thing they're good at. A Russia investigation that was ridiculous and a waste of $100 million and much more than that. And now we have the same people, the same scum that are weaponizing the entire justice system to persecute us on fake charges, even while Joe Biden is the most corrupt president in the history of our country. We went through years of that with the Russia Hoax. With all of the different things that we had to go through, we've gone through years of it.
He was right every single time. It's amazing. Whenever he said that kind of stuff, they would write it down. They still do. Oh, President Trump is lying. That's not the truth. No, that was the total truth. He has been yet once again vindicated now by Tulsi Gabbard and these. It's just interesting detail, some of which we did not have before. How they excluded material that showed, Putin at times was trying to hurt President Trump politically. We have it. We know it. President Trump in trouble. He was dealing with the Russia stuff since 2016, 2015. But look at this. All the way up. This has nothing to do with Russia. All the times they arrested him and threw him in jail, right? That's fairly recent. This has been wild, but I want to emphasize in 2015, that's when the corruption started, all right, with the fake FISA application that they lied on to spy on Carter Page, basically to spy on the campaign, and the stuff that the FBI was saying out loud to each other about how they were going to stop President Trump all the way back in 2016. Strzok, Page, it's all right there. Yeah, we're going to stop it. So this is relevant again, folks, because, well, look, they wasted our time with this Russia collusion hoax for how long did that last? 2 years, 2.5 years? And every night on the cable, right? Now we have all this information that they're lying. And I think the needle should move. And I think people should be fired. And I think people should go to jail.
Greg Kelly is the host of Greg Kelly Reports, 9 p.m. Eastern on Newsmax. On last night's Finnerty, Rob spoke about Russiagate with former Florida Congressman turned TV host Matt Gaetz.
Joining us now for more, former Florida Congressman Matt Gaetz. Congressman, good to see you. So my team today found an interview of you with Mike Huckabee. This is over 5 years ago, where you essentially predicted all of this. Take a look.
This was a hoax perpetrated by the Obama, Biden, Clinton regime, that they cooked it up even before the election. And the importance of Comey is that he was really the inside man. He was the person transitioning from the Obama government to the Trump government to try to really effectuate the hoax. And what we all know now is that it was fake. President Trump was never an agent of the Russian government. Russia's never been less relevant, I think, in my lifetime for sure.
All right, so take us through it. How'd you know all that back then, and then what do you think happens next?
Well, first of all, it's obvious I was a lot thinner when I was in Congress. Now it is easy to reflect on this scheme that was developed where President Obama essentially ordered a hit on the American democracy. And if they're going to prosecute Donald Trump for bringing home some boxes, maybe they should prosecute Barack Obama for trying to bring home the presidency with him. And we knew that. You know how I knew it? Because I was a part of the Trump campaign, and we could barely collude with ourselves at the time to put on the next rally. We were not colluding with Russia. And what they were trying to do was kneecap the new administration coming in. And you can only imagine how furious Obama must have been. They took away his third term in Hillary Clinton. He assembles the team, and he makes the call. Comey executes it from the inside. Clapper and Brennan, they facilitate this corrupt relationship with the media where they breathlessly say that there are all these assessments showing that Trump is an agent of the Russian government. And if there is not accountability on this, it will absolutely happen again. That's why I'm so excited that the great folks leading the Department of Justice right now have a strike team that they have assigned to this project, and I expect indictments.
Okay, so you expect indictments. Obama has immunity, maybe. I mean, we'll see. Who knows if this rises to the level of treason? My opinion, yes. Do you think we do see subpoenas and indictments for people like Brennan, Comey, Clapper, McCabe, people that were close to this, other people that were mentioned in the Tulsi Gabbard documents?
Well, any prosecutor has to make a decision about the likelihood of a conviction. And the flaw in the past is that they viewed Washington, D.C. as the sole venue to bring this type of case. The tell in what the Justice Department has done here is that they are looking at a conspiracy, charging a conspiracy. And where that's the case, any place where there is a predicate criminal act can be a place where a venue can lie. So if one of these folks sent a text message from Palm Beach, if they answered an email while they were skiing in Colorado, if they were on a phone call in Virginia, you could have a circumstance where you escape the tyranny of the D.C. jury system. That's what I think opens this up. The real question is what Congress will do, because Gabbard and Ratcliffe have put on paper what witnesses have told them. We don't know how those witnesses are going to perform in open court in front of Congress, but I think that getting more of this out into the open is the better path. When you try to hold it all back, that's where people lose confidence. They lose faith that anything's going to really happen. And so I would be willing to put those witnesses up and answer questions.
These are all your old friends in Congress that run these committees.
Yeah,
do you
they had
think
such a high view of me when I was there. I totally remember that. No one ever said anything bad about me when I was in Congress.
No, but you have friends certainly on the right. Do you think they will do this? They will subpoena these people and
I think they should. I think they should. I think that they may hear from the Department of Justice, hold off, stay back. We're developing a case. We don't want to get the cart before the horse. I really think this is the type of crime against the country that you have to attack at every level, using criminal process, using the oversight process, and maybe even changing some of our laws so it doesn't happen again.
Former Florida Congressman and MAGA Gold Card member, Platinum Card member, Matt Gaetz on Finnerty. Current FBI Director Kash Patel found super sensitive documents related to the origins of the Trump-Russia probe in a secret room at the FBI Bureau that he says were clearly meant to be destroyed in so-called burn bags. After being declassified by the FBI, the CIA, Department of National Intelligence, and Attorney General Bondi, they will then be sent to Senate Judiciary Committee Chairman Chuck Grassley, who will then ultimately release them to the public. You could read a lot more about that at Newsmax.com. And as I mentioned, tomorrow is the deadline, the trade deadline. The White House expects more deals to be made today and tomorrow. As I speculated on yesterday's Newsmax Daily, well, I didn't even really speculate. I said people in the administration were telling me that a deal with Seoul was on the horizon. I thought it was going to be Thursday, or they thought it was going to be Thursday. President Trump announced yesterday that Washington had reached a full and complete trade deal with Seoul, South Korea, setting blanket tariffs on the country's exports into the United States at 15%. Trump also said in a post on Truth Social that South Korea will give the United States $350 billion for investments owned and controlled by the United States. Then he signed an executive order imposing 50% tariffs on Brazil.
We're now negotiating with various other countries, and the rest we're just sending out the bill to. We send a letter saying that you'll pay a certain tariff.
A White House statement says the decision was made based on the recent policies, practices, and actions of Brazil's government that the Trump administration says showed exceptional and significant threats to its national security and its economic interests. He also signed a bill reforming home loans for veterans.
This legislation provides desperately needed relief to veterans and their families who have fallen behind on their mortgages, of which there are a lot, because we have somebody that doesn't want to lower interest rates and probably won't lower them today. It's a really sort of an amazing situation.
As the president and most everyone else predicted, Fed Chair Jerome Powell did not cut interest rates yesterday. And as usual, he had to go on and make comments that drove the markets from the positive into the negative. Jerome, the profit killer Powell.
Higher tariffs have begun to show through more clearly to prices of some goods, but their overall effects on economic activity and inflation remain to be seen.
More on this from our Carl Higbie.
Hey, remember when the experts told us that what Trump was doing wouldn't work? I think recently they predicted it was only 2.3% GDP growth was going to be. 1.1 was good under Biden, if you remember. But, yeah, that's weird. He outperformed that kind of by a lot.
GDP comes out better than expected, 3%, complete reversal of the first quarter.
3%? That was well above the Fed Chair Jerome Powell's target rate, what he said he needed to lower interest rates, which he's, again, refused to do today. And Trump called him out on Truth Social, saying, second quarter GDP just out 3%, way better than expected. Too late, must now lower the interest rate. No inflation, let people buy and refinance their homes. Yup. And in any other normal economy, without a Trump-hating Fed chair, that would happen. You see, since the Fed took over interest rates, which, by the way, I don't think was a good idea, in an ideal economy, inflation is just under interest rates. For instance, if you have a 1% inflation rate, you shouldn't have much more than a 2% interest rate, which is what we had in Trump's first term. Growth exploded. Conversely, when inflation spikes, like it did under Jimmy Carter, when Reagan came in and appointed Volcker to run the Fed, they had to raise interest rates to like 18% to counteract the inflation at the same time. Now, I've talked about this before, about only two levers to control our economy. Congress controls fiscal policy, which means how much money we spend and how much we're taxed. If Congress spends more money and doesn't tax us more, they have to print more money to cover their balance. We've been doing this for the last, actually longer than the last 25 years, but really ramped up in the last 25 years, which is why we have $37 trillion in debt. And what's that done? Inflation. If you had $1 in your pocket in the year 2000 and you went to sleep and you woke up today with the same dollar in your pocket, it's only worth 52 cents. The U.S. dollar, I mean, it's depreciated by almost 50% in 25 years. And that's because we put more dollars in the system. I mean, we printed more. Don't even get me started on leaving the gold standard. That's a whole nother day. Now, the fine balance in our system is how the government borrows money. And here's where the Fed is coming in. Monetary policy. That's the other lever in controlling the economy. They sell bonds to us or foreign countries or whoever will buy them to cover the money they print, borrow, which they pay interest on. And the key point that makes bonds attractive is that they're government guaranteed, low risk, and the interest rate usually outperforms the depreciation rate of the dollar. The way the economy keeps from crashing, though, is if you were to, give that same dollar to the government to buy their bonds, in return from interest on that bond would be greater than the depreciation of your value. So your dollar wouldn't lose value if you invested in bonds. That's the whole scheme here, okay? And here's where it gets really interesting. If there's too much interest being paid on your dollar compared to inflation, I mean, it's great for you in the short run. You're making a ton of money. But in the long run, your tax dollars are actually paying that interest that you are earning. Government's taking a ton of your money and only giving you a little bit back. And this is what Trump is faced with right now. In the coming months, we need to refinance about $7 trillion worth of our debt, or those bonds, that we've guaranteed people a return on. The current interest rate that Powell is holding is 4.5%. If those bonds, our debt, are refinanced at that current rate, the federal government will be paying out $315 billion a year just in interest. That has to be paid for by tax revenue or borrowing money, which also requires interest on that. But if Jerome Powell lowers it to 1%, as Trump has been calling for, I mean, that's very aggressive, but I'm with him on that one, it would only cost us $70 billion to service that every single year.
70 billion versus 350 billion a year. As Carl said, 1% is extremely aggressive, and it isn't going to happen. But somewhere between the current 4.5% and maybe 2% would be reasonable. And the Fed will only lower it 25 or 50 basis points at a time, which is 0.25% or 0.5%. So it's going to take some time to get there as well. Like, we need to start somewhere. Carl Higbie is the host of Frontline, 5 p.m. Eastern on Newsmax. He then went on to talk about mortgage rates, credit card interest rates, all of that stuff, which is the other key factor behind lowering interest rates and how it would affect the housing market, which is part of the reason President Trump signed the bill that he signed yesterday, giving veterans relief on their mortgages. I mentioned there is a White House press briefing this afternoon. That's number one, the president having lunch with Vice President Vance at the White House before the press briefing. And later today, he is signing another executive order, which is open to the White House press pool, meaning there will be plenty of questions. And Brown University is the latest university to announce it will pay $50 million, that money going to the Rhode Island workforce development, in a deal with the Trump administration to restore research funding to the university and end its investigation into discrimination. Brown said it will also adopt a government definition of male and female and remove any consideration of race from the admissions process. Well. Brown President Christina Paxson said the deal preserves Brown's academic independence. The terms of the deal include a clause that the government cannot dictate curriculum or the content of academic speech at Brown University. Wake Up America spoke about it with Education Secretary Linda McMahon.
You know, one of the areas where you've had a lot of success in these early months of your term, it's you and the president, quite the winning streak when it comes to fighting anti-Semitism, protecting Jewish students. A new deal, another new deal announced recently. Brown University, $50 million in payments to state workforce development programs in exchange for $50 million in research grants. I mean, you're having a lot of success when it comes to battling anti-Semitism, protecting Jewish students, and fighting DEI, really in the Ivy League.
Yeah, we definitely are. I mean, we've had 3 great triumphs, I think. If you look at Columbia, that was, I think, the biggest deal that we announced. They will pay a $200 million fine and then a $20 million fine that'll go into, a fund to pay for, those were abuses in hiring. And so that was an incredibly big deal at Columbia. And it also dealt with having protests on campuses. You can protest as long as you have peaceful protests, but you can't wear masks. If you have to wear a mask for religious purposes, then you have to have your ID that you'd be willing to show. And there were just many parts of that Columbia deal that I hope will become the template for others. We're still negotiating with Harvard, but we also had a great success with University of Pennsylvania in getting rid of the Title IX violations, and they apologized to the women whose title was taken away. They took the title away from Leah Thomas, the man who was competing in women's swimming. So we've had some really big successes, not only with Columbia, with University of Pennsylvania, and then yesterday signing the Brown University deal, in which they also are paying a fine of $50 million. As you mentioned earlier, Mark, they will be investing that money on workforce development programs in the state. They also have agreed on the Title IX and defining women as women and men as men. So these are really big accomplishments for three big universities where, as I say, I'm hoping Harvard is going to stay at the table for negotiations. Yeah. And then we have several other investigations going on as well. But these are big wins.
That's Education Secretary Linda McMahon on Wake Up America with Charlotte McBride and Mark Lotter, who also announced the arrest of three douchebags in connection with the weekend violence in Cincinnati, which again, if you've seen the videos, which you probably have by now, appear to be racially motivated against white people.
We've talked a lot about the shocking Cincinnati street brawl, with many in the Queen City saying the beatdown caught on tape shows a city spinning out of control.
Yeah, it's certainly not a good look. And critics are blasting city leaders now for putting progressive politics over public safety. Plain and simple. Newsmax crime correspondent Jason Matera has this special report for us this morning.
A mob attack so violent, so brazen, it sparked outrage nationwide and raised questions about who really controls the streets of Cincinnati.
I know many people saw it with shock and horror, but for us that live downtown, it was just a continuation of things that we've seen all throughout the summer months of elevated and escalated crime and violence that's happening on our streets.
3 suspects have now been arrested in the savage assault. One of them, Montiana's Merriweather, was already indicted in July on numerous felonies, including firearm charges, then walked free on just $400 bail. A wrist slap that proves what critics have been shouting for years. No consequences, no deterrence, no accountability.
City government needs to ensure that we have safe streets and clean streets and that we spend our money properly. That's not happening in our city government, and that's what is leading to the situation that you're seeing in our downtown area.
Pastor Corey Bowman, half-brother of J.D. Vance, says this fight is personal. He's running for mayor on the promise to clean up the streets and restore order.
The reality is that progressive governance is really rooted in defunding the police and putting emphasis on community initiatives rather than a strong police force.
The numbers don't lie. Crime is still dangerously high in this once desirable Midwestern city. In just the last month alone, there have been 145 violent attacks, including 53 robberies, 11 rapes, and nearly 80 aggravated assaults.
Corey, the basic duty of any local government is to keep the people safe. It's bare minimum. So why is this so hard for Cincinnati leaders to accomplish?
Because we're too busy on focusing on national politics and social issues and social agendas.
Bowman calls this attitude trickle-down incompetence, starting at the top with the mayor, then the city manager, the city council, and even the police chief. Meanwhile, the good people still left in politics and law enforcement, he says, are demoralized, drained, and watching hope bleed out by the day.
When the officers repeatedly state that they don't feel like the city government and the city leaders have their back, then all of a sudden they don't feel like they can actually do their job.
From downtown brawls to roving teens hunting in packs, the sense of public safety is collapsing, and the demand for real change is growing louder.
If we don't step up, who will? Enough is enough.
Mark, Charlotte, this time the judge didn't play that $400 revolving door game. 3 of these suspects appeared in court yesterday, and bond was set at $100,000, $200,000, and $500,000. 2 suspects, though, still remain on the loose.
That's some serious bail there.
Yeah.
All right, Jason, thanks for that.
Thank you.
That's Newsmax crime reporter Jason Matera on Wake Up America this morning. And former Vice President Kamala Harris announcing that she will not run for California governor in 2026. In a statement Wednesday, Harris said, "I love this state, its people, and its promise, but after deep reflection, I've decided that I will not run for governor in this election." End quote. Which leads me to believe that she will not run because she will be making another run for the White House in 2028, along with 30 or so other Democrats that think they could be president. On Wall Street, stocks opened in the green, courtesy of huge earnings late yesterday from Microsoft and Meta, after closing lower yesterday thanks to the comments of the Fed chairman, Jerome the Profit Killer Powell. Microsoft is joining NVIDIA as the only 2 companies worth $4 trillion. Wow. Today, it's Apple and Amazon on the earnings calendar after the closing bell. And this is a good time for me to remind you that you could own shares of Newsmax. If you're a new viewer or new listener of the podcast, Newsmax went public several months ago. The stock symbol is NMAX, as in Newsmax. Tomorrow is the big jobs report for July. Wall Street and Washington will be watching out for that. Be sure to keep up with all of today's news and breaking developments throughout the day on Newsmax, N2, and at Newsmax.com. The news starts each and every morning with Charlotte McBride and Mark Lotter on Wake Up America, followed by National Report, Newsline at noon, Chris Salcedo, Carl Higbie, Greta Van Susteren, all the way through Finnerty at 8, Greg Kelly reports, and much more. I'm Tony Marino. Thank you, as always, for listening to the Newsmax Daily. Enjoy the rest of your day. Pay attention and keep on fighting the good fight.
News breaks every minute, every day. You need the app, the Newsmax app. Find it free on your smartphone store. Then watch us anytime, anywhere.
Information. Truth. Is freedom. Is Newsmax. It's real news for real people.